Good morning, Kensington. Good morning, everyone. How are we feeling this morning? That was okay. Let me ask one more time. How are we feeling this morning? Yes, there's the energy I've been looking for. Again, we are so excited that you decided to join us this morning. I want to invite everyone. Let us stand to our feet, and we're going to sing a song about our God today. It's an encouraging one. If you know it, we want to hear your voices singing it with us. Here we go. Remember those walls that we called sin and shame. They were like prisons that we couldn't escape. But he came and he died and he rose. Those walls are rubble now. Yeah. Oh. Remember those giants we called death and grave. They were like mountains that stood in our way. But he came and he died, then he rose. Those giants are dead now. Let's sing this next part out. Here we go. 'Cause this is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, and this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim, this is our God, King Jesus. Oh, remember that fear that took our breath away. Faith so weak that we could barely pray. But he heard every word and every whisper. Now those altars in the wilderness and tell the story of his faithfulness. Never once did he fail, and he never will. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross and beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim, this is our God, King Jesus. Listen. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but him. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross and beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim, this is our God, King Jesus. Again, he bore the cross and beat the grave. So let heaven and earth proclaim, this is our God, King Jesus. Oh, come on, make some noise for our God, King Jesus. Yes, he is so many things to us. He's a healer for some of us. He's a provider for some of us. And for me, I can say he's my foundation. I can depend on him. I can lean on him. So I want us to sing this next song out together. It's a familiar song that we know. Yes. Listen, Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. If you know what, I hear you. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? Here we go. He won't. That's your encouragement. That's your reminder that he won't fail. Listen, verse 2. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I've built my life on Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now? Say, he won't. Yes, that's our declaration, that he won't. I trust and believe he won't fail. He won't fail. Again, he won't. That's the God I love. He won't. Oh Lord, he won't fail. He won't fail. Let's declare that he's the firm foundation. Say, firm foundation. Yes, he's the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. Yes, through all the hard times, he won't. Through the storm and the rain, he won't fail. He won't fail. We believe that. We trust that you won't fail us. We depend on you. You'll carry us through.
Rain came, wind blew. My house is built on you, and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through.
Rain came, wind
Blew. My house is built on you.
Come on, sing it.
I'm safe with you. I'm going to make it.
Come on, let's declare it like we believe it. Say, rain came, wind blew. My house, it was built on you. Now I can say I'm safe with you. Come on, come on, sing it. I'm going to make it through, 'cause I'm standing strong on you, Jesus. That's how I know I'll make it through, 'cause my house is built on you. Yes, 'cause Christ is my firm foundation. He's the rock. Come on, declare. When everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful. Faithful are you, God. Why would he fail now? Like you made it say, he won't. No matter what you're facing, he won't fail. He won't fail. Oh, you won't fail me, Jesus. Oh, he won't. He won't. He's faithful. He's loyal. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't fail us. And that's what he wants to be, the God that won't fail. He wants to be our foundation. A foundation that we can build on, that we can lean on, that we can trust in. And for some of us, it might be hard to trust. We got questions. And I'm here to tell you, this moment is for you today. Kensington has been doing some great things. We got a video prepared. I want you to check it out.
Hey, Kensington family, we have a great opportunity for you coming up on March 16th to invite your friends. I'm sitting here with my friend, Abdu Murray. Abdu Murray is an apologist. He is a man who has thought deeply about the things of Jesus and the Bible, spoken all over the place, including a lot of college campuses, including MIT, author, and just a person who's really gifted at being able to answer some of the hardest questions about God and faith. And so Sunday, March 16th, Abdu, you're going to be speaking in our We Believe series on why Jesus. Why is that important to you?
Yeah, well, as someone who came from a non-Christian background and came to faith in my late 20s, having sampled various worldviews, non-Christian worldviews from the religion of my birth, Islam, to Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, atheism, every ism and schism that's out there, I really began to see that the credibility of the Christian faith, historically, scientifically, and existentially, really sung not only to my mind, but to my heart. And so what I want to do is explore on Sunday why Jesus in a world of limitless options, and why he is uniquely compelling.
Yeah. And then we've got a really special night the following Wednesday on the 19th of March. And we're going to be doing an event we're calling Ask Anything. Tell us a little bit about what that night's going to be like.
Yeah, so this is really a night to ask literally anything. I mean, questions you can think that you or your friends can think of that challenge the whole enterprise of the Christian faith. Things like, hasn't science put God out of a job? Doesn't evolution account for everything? What about God and morality? What about the Bible and slavery? What about the Bible and women? Sexuality questions, morality questions, history questions. Does the Bible get it right historically? All of these questions and more are completely on the table.
Yeah, that Wednesday night's going to be at our Troy campus. And so think now, be praying now. Who's that person that would love to be there to bring their question? And let's pray big things that the Lord would move powerfully. Can't wait, March 16th and 19th. See you then.
Oh my goodness. I will be asking Abdu Murray why my 7-year-old keeps waking up at 3 a.m. asking for applesauce. Like, what in the world? My name is Taylor Leal, and I'm on the kids team here at our Troy campus. And in all seriousness, I am so excited for this, specifically the Wednesday night with Abdu Murray. I am a skeptic by nature, and I have so many questions, and I'm sure that you do too. And so we are not going to shy away from any of them. Abdu is going to, in real time, be answering some of the questions and the things that we're wrestling with about God and our faith, our humanity, the world. And I'm just really excited to dive into that with all of you. It's cool because in our kids program, once a year, we do a little mini series called Tough Questions. And we let our kids do the same thing. We let them write questions down and we pray about them. We sometimes seek outside advice because we don't even know how to answer them. And I love that we're doing that with our adults. So please come hang out with us on March 19th. It's a Wednesday night from 7 to 8:30. There's free childcare, so don't let that be a barrier for you. You do not have to register your children. We're going to have enough people here to come and take care of them. So bring your kids, be ready to ask tough questions, and let's wrestle with some of those things together. I have two things that I want to bring to your attention this morning, and one of them is our High School United Night. Are there any high schoolers in the room right now? Good, there shouldn't be, because our high school program is happening right now upstairs. Do I have any parents of high schoolers in the room? There we go. Yeah, I do. Okay, cool. Because they're probably going to forget to tell you about this, I want to tell you about this. Our High School United Night is coming up, and that is where our high schoolers across all campuses come together, and they get to hang out with each other. And there's going to be amazing worship. There's going to be a time to connect with each other. It's going to be a really good community time. So we want them to come. It's fun. It's better when we're together. We have so much fun when we merge all the campuses together and we let this place be a crazy place for high schoolers to just be themselves. So invite your high schooler, tell your high schooler to invite their friend and their friend's friends and all of that, because all are welcome, and we're excited for that night. So March 16th, 6 p.m. here at the Troy campus. Last but not least, I would like to just remind you of the things that we have been talking about for the last 4 weeks, specifically as it revolves around Next Gen. Here at Kensington, we are passionate about the next generation. We care deeply about their faith. We care deeply about the questions that they have. We care deeply about investing in them and making sure that we set them up for success in their future. And I don't know if you know this, but here at Kensington, whether you are just born, you are birthed, all the way to high school, we have a ministry designed specifically for you. And so in every ministry, in our kids ministry, our middle school ministry, and our high school ministry, we have a program that is so thoughtfully put on, because we have worship, we have a large group lesson that is definitely tailored to the specific age group of the child. And then after our large group lessons on Sunday, our kids go back to something that we call small groups. And it's our desire for every child in our church to have a small group leader. A small group hopefully consists of 1 to 2 adults and 6 to 8 kids. We can't confidently say that we have that yet, but our desire is to make sure that every child in our church has a small group and a small group leader, because we believe that better conversations and questions come about in those small group times. And so we want to invite you to join our team. We want to invite you to be part of our Next Gen team, whether it be on our kids team, our middle school team, or our high school team. And if you are thinking about it or you're curious about it, we'd love to talk to you. You can come hang out with us in the lobby. We'll be at the kids check-in desk after service. But I also want to invite you to a special night. So coming up on March 7th, that's this Friday at 6:30, we have our Together for Next Gen volunteer night. So do I have any kids volunteers in the room, or middle school or high school volunteers in the room? This night is for you. But it's also for those of you who've been kind of sitting in the seats and saying, gosh, I'm kind of wondering what it might look like to serve on the Next Gen team. We want you to come too. You don't have to sign up for anything. We just want you to come and be with us and understand and hear our hearts for the Next Gen. So come hang out with us on March 7th at 6:30. I'll get off my soapbox now. Can you tell that I care a little bit about that? All right. Well, at this time, I'll have you guys go ahead, stand up, say hello to the people around you. And if you could crunch to the center a little bit so those who are walking in have space to sit, that would be awesome.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I think it's like 24 degrees outside, right? It's a little bit chilly. Hopefully you have a cup of coffee in your hand or some hot beverage so to warm us up, but this is what gives me hope. Next Tuesday, I believe, it is supposed to be in the 60s, which is extraordinary. And so that gives me hope, and that'll get me through this week, which I hear there's some 50s coming along. And so, hey, you know what? March hits and Michigan turns a corner and we can actually see our grass, which is still dead. But hey, you know what? We'll take it, right? And so, hey, let me just say, if we have not met, my name is Andrew Kim, and I'm part of the team here at Kensington. And whether we are here in the room or whether you're joining us via streams from wherever you are, we want to say welcome and so glad that you are here. And we are currently in the second week. We're today in the second week of our series, We Believe, where we're really unpacking some of the core tenets of the Christian faith. And last week, Nate Marialki, he kicked us off by talking about what we believe about God. And when it comes to this topic, I love the words of the late author A.W. Tozer, and this is what he wrote. That he said, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. It's absolutely foundational. Everything stems from this, which is why we addressed it first in this series. And so today we're going to continue on by talking about what we believe about creation. And what we believe is that God is the maker of heaven and earth, of everything that is both seen and unseen. That he's the one who created the massive and the majestic mountain ranges. He's the one who created the deepest of oceans, which we as human beings still haven't fully explored yet. He's the one who made the vast expanse of space and all the crazy plants, animals, and insects that we have running around on this earth. Because have you ever looked at something and ever wondered, why did God make that? And every single time I come across poison ivy and mosquitoes, I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Right? But they're here, and God made them for a reason. And God also created you and me and all of humanity with our passions and our interests and our idiosyncrasies as well. Because this is who God is. He is creator, the creator of all things.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. God said, "Let there be light." And stars were breathed into existence. The sun, the moon, the stars. The universe is formed, an unimaginable expanse of space containing all matter and energy, with an estimated diameter at least 93 billion light years. In the beginning, God created.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets formed. If the stars were made to worship, so will I can see your heart in everything you've made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I.
And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things and beasts of the earth." And it was so. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, after our likeness." So God created mankind in his own image. God gave humanity dominion over creation. The fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, the plants yielding seeds, everything that has the breath of life. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good.
God of your promise, You don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. For once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. Oh, and as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature, so will I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you, so will I.
From the vast expanses of space, the glorious sunsets that crown each day, the roar of the oceans, the majestic peaks of the mountains, the beauty of everything that has the breath of life, to the number of hairs on our heads, God is creator of all.
The stars were made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. If everything exists to lift you high, so will I. If the wind goes where you send it, so will I. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. If the sum of all our praises still falls shy, we'll sing again 100 billion I can see your heart and everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If creation sings your praises, so will I.
And when we see those pictures and when we see those images, it's just absolutely breathtaking. The magnitude and scope of what God has created, just our world and creation, our universe to be. And when we look back on human history for many human beings, that it has been so, creation is so extraordinary that that is where we have stopped. But ultimately, creation points to something even greater. It points to someone even greater, because if the art is this beautiful, what must the artist be like? And that's really what we're going to be diving into and really looking at today. So as we continue on, would you join me in prayer? Jesus, thank you, Lord. Thank you for your creation, Lord, that's sitting in this room and streaming as well, because every single one of us, we are a part of that as well. But thank you, Lord, that we can exist in this extraordinary universe, which we don't even understand, even a tiny portion of it, God. That's all we can sort of wrap our minds around, because it is so vast and so magnificent. But thank you, Lord, that it really shows us more of who you are. And that's our prayer today, that we would know you better, that we would see you more clearly. But I also want to pray, Lord, for people, Lord, in our community today, people who walked in or turned on their device and just feel like they're carrying the weight of the world. There's so much going on in their lives, Lord, so many challenges and struggles that it feels like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And if that is us today, Lord, that we would know, Lord, and be reminded of your peace, of your kindness, and the fact that we are not alone in this. And that through your people, God, you walk with us, you carry us, and give us everything that we need. Give us a tangible sense of hope today. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you that you love us so deeply. And we pray all these things in your powerful name. Amen. And so as we continue on today, something else that we want to do is we want to receive our offering. So ushers, I want to invite you to come forward to receive that. And if you are somebody who would like to financially partner with us, there are a number of ways that we can do so. We're going to see the offering bags coming around, but at the same time, we still have a lot of electronic ways to give. And if you're anything like my family, we give electronically every month. And so there are a lot of different ways, whether it's scanning the QR code, texting the word Kensington to 77977, using the app or the website. And please know that when we give, it absolutely makes a difference in the lives of others. Giving fuels life change. And I got a glimpse of it this past weekend. And Friday night, for 12 hours, we had takeover. And that is where almost 300 middle schoolers came together. They had a service over in the chapel, and the energy was crazy. We're going to see, that's a picture of it. And so it was crazy, the amount of energy. And then, with all of that energy, they went to Kalahari, and they were going down water slides at 2, 3, whatever in the morning. And it was a lot of fun. But this was the picture, right? We see pictures on the side. But this was I didn't take a picture of this. I wish I had. But this was the image that sticks in my mind that is so aptly represents takeover. I was out in the lobby, right? And there's all these middle schoolers around me, and I see this young student over by where we get coffee. And she pulls out of her bag a 2-liter bottle of orange Fanta. And she proceeds to take the top off, and she just starts chugging this thing. Right? And so she finishes about a third of it, realizes, hey, maybe I shouldn't drink all of it, and puts the cap back on and puts it back in her bag. And that, to me, is what takeover is all about. Crazy amounts of sugar, energy, but at the same time, also our middle schoolers having a lot of fun, because this is one of the events that our middle schoolers and our families, we love to invite other people to. People love coming to this, and when they do, they're able to not only hear about Jesus, but to also experience who he is, his love, acceptance, that the church community is a place where they belong, and that where we want them to be a part of, and to really be able to experience Jesus in a deeper way. And so if you are somebody who had a middle schooler come, we want to say thank you for sending that student. And please know that our giving, it allows us to do events like this. So thank you for your financial partnership. And so today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about this topic of creation. And I find it a little bit funny, a little bit ironic even that I am talking about it. Because when it comes to nature, you know what? I don't really have this deep appreciation of it. My wife, Robin, does. And so when she sees a beautiful sunset, what she'll do is she'll turn to me many times and she'll say, hey, you know what? Isn't that gorgeous? And my usual response is, it's okay. Right? But even for a curmudgeon like me, there have been moments in my life where God's creation has just taken my breath away. I remember the very first time, and this was in our 20s, when we drove into Yosemite. And we were on this winding road. I forgot which entrance that we entered into, but we were on this winding road, and I'm in the driver's seat. So I'm trying to focus on where we're going so I don't drive us off the side of the cliff. But to my left was this amazing view. And so I just kept on doing this, right? This. And so we thought it would probably be for our best if we stopped. So we pulled over and we got out, and this was the view that we saw. Absolutely incredible. And I remember turning to Robin and saying, this reminds me of where they filmed The Lord of the Rings. And I know that they filmed it in New Zealand, but the scenery in that movie, in those movies, is so extraordinary. I was like, that looks like that. It's just that beautiful. And in college, I was a biology major. And one of the most fascinating courses that I took during that time, during my undergrad, was a neurobiology course. And it just, as I learned more and more and more, it just blew my mind how God has designed the human body. And so I'm going to nerd out on you a little bit. So let me just ask you, any biology majors here in this room right now? Okay, so there's 4 of us here. And so we might sympathize with me. But this is the thing, right? It is so incredible, right? And so hopefully you find it as incredible. And so for example, right? One of the things that I learned in this class is that if we want to bend our knee, right, all we have to do is have a thought. And a couple hundred milliseconds later, we're able to do this. But physiologically, what happens in our body in order to do this really is extraordinary. Because that thought in our brain, it's translated into an electrical impulse which travels along something called a neuron. And we can think of it sort of like a long cord in our body. But it's not like there's one neuron that connects our brain to our knee. There are multiple neurons. And so that electrical impulse travels along that neuron, and when it gets to the end of it, neurotransmitters are released, which then travel across a gap called a synapse. They attach to receptors onto another neuron, and then it continues to travel along that neuron until it finally does that over and over and over again until it finally allows us to do this. And that whole process takes a couple of hundred milliseconds just for a knee bend. And so imagine how complicated it must be for me to do this, right? Like imagine that. Everything that has to happen in our body from the thought to say, hey, move all of this, jump, do all of this. And it's incredible to me. And as I just learned more and more and more, it just astonished me. The complexity of our bodies and how God has designed us, which we are a part of creation. And for some people believe that science disproves the existence of God. But I truly believe the opposite, because especially in college, as I learned more and more and more, it just screamed out to me the existence of a creator who is magnificent, who is brilliant, who is the greatest artist in the universe, and who has made all of this. And that's also what the Bible passage that we're going to be looking at today, what it also tells us. And we're going to be looking at a couple, but one of the main Bible passages we're going to be looking at comes from this Old Testament book called Psalms. And Psalms is a collection of 150 ancient Hebrew poems, songs, and prayers written all throughout Israel's history. And the particular psalm we're going to be looking at is Psalm chapter 19. And so this is what I want to invite all of us to do, whether we're here in this room or whether we're watching on stream. And I know we rarely do this, but if we have a copy of the scriptures, I want to invite us to open it up, whether it's on our phones, whether we actually have a physical copy of the Bible, to turn to Psalm 19. And if we have a physical copy, if we actually have the book itself, just split it in half and we'll probably end up in the book of Psalms. If not, just go back probably 20 to 30 pages and we'll probably hit it, right? If we have a Bible app, the book of Psalms, as I said, is in the Old Testament. It's after the books of Nehemiah, Esther, and Job, before Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, if that helps anyone at all. Or we can just Google Psalm 19 or just use ChatGPT, whatever works, right? But as we're finding it, right, Psalm 19 has impacted the lives of a lot of people throughout human history, one of them being C.S. Lewis. And this is what Lewis said about this chapter. He said, I take this to be the greatest poem in the Psalter. Remember, there are 150 of them. And he said this was the greatest one and one of the greatest lyrics in the world. Psalm 19 was his favorite psalm. And we're going to be looking at just the first 4 verses, but they are powerful. And if we actually look at Psalm 19, if you're there right now, whether it's on your phone, whether you have a physical copy, before verse 1, there is a statement there. There's a heading there. And depending upon what translation you have, it basically says, for the director of music, a psalm of David. And typically, you know what, when I would read the Bible as a kid, I'd be like, you know what, whatever. I just wouldn't sometimes even acknowledge that, wouldn't even read it and just go right into verse 1. But that statement there provides us with 2 very important pieces of information. It tells us who wrote it, and it tells us who it was written to. And who it was written to, it says it's written to the director. It's for the director of music. And who the director of music is, it's either a reference to the choir or the music leader in the ancient Jewish temple, or to God himself, who is the greatest musician. That's who it was written to. And it was written by none other than King David, the second king of the nation of Israel, who wrote 73 out of the 150 Psalms. And what we need to understand about David, the guy who wrote this, is that before this guy ever became king, for years, he was a shepherd. And we all know that being a shepherd, the job of a shepherd, that is an outside job. It's really hard to be a shepherd in someone's living room. Right? So he was outside, not for months, but rather for years, learning about nature, learning about creation, navigating it, and embracing it. And so the first handful of verses talk about God's creation, talk about nature, which he was an expert in. And this psalm, what it really answers, it answers some of the most important questions about who God is. Questions that most of us, if not all of us, have asked at one point in our lives. Questions like, is there a God? Does he actually exist? And how does he communicate with us? And so let's jump into the very first verse. This is what David writes. He says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies, they proclaim the works of his hands. And so what David is talking about here, when he's saying the heavens declare the glory of God, when he's referring to the heavens, he's not referring to heaven itself. But what he's doing is that the picture that comes to my mind is he's looking up at the sky. And he sees, depending upon what time of day it is, the sun, the moon, the stars, the clouds. This is what he is referring to. These things declare the glory of God. And now, thousands of years later, we know a lot more about these things than David ever did. We know, for example, that the sun is so massive that it could actually fit more than 1.3 million Earths inside of it. And the core temperature of the sun, and I don't know who measured this or who determined this, the core temperature of the sun is about 27 million degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't even get that. I look at my oven and it heats up to around 500 degrees and I think that's scalding hot. So 27 million, that's like, I can't even wrap my mind around that. Also, when we think about our little solar system, there are billions, I just learned this past week, billions of solar systems in the universe. And our little one, it is so big that if we wanted to get to Pluto, if we wanted to fly a plane to Pluto, which by the way, back in 2006, when it got demoted to being a dwarf planet, that was a very discouraging moment for me. It used to be my favorite planet. Can't even claim that. But if we wanted to fly to Pluto, it would take us more than 800 years. Which motivates me to complain less next time I have to fly to Korea, right? 800 years. That's crazy. And this is something else that I learned, is that there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on this earth. That's how extraordinary it is. And what David is saying is that all of this, all of creation, what it does, it declares, it reveals the glory of God. It says to us, it reveals, it tells us about who God is. Not only that he is the one who created it, but that there is a God. That he is magnificent, that he is brilliant, that he is extraordinarily innovative, that this is what it's saying. What David is saying is that creation reveals a creator. That it points us to the fact that there is someone who created all of this. And it also says this in the very first verse of the Bible, the very first one in the book of Genesis. And this is what it says. In the beginning, maybe even if we've never read the Bible, we probably heard of this at some point. It says, in the beginning, God created. He created the heavens and the earth. And that word created in Hebrew is a very, very special word because it's used of no one else in the Bible other than God. Because only God can do what he did in the very beginning, and only God can do what he does now. No one else has that power. No one is able to do that. And that word created, when it says that God created, what it's communicating is two very important things. It not only tells us that God created the universe, that he is the one, but also when we dive deeper into that Hebrew word, what it means is that God created this world from nothing. He didn't use pre-existing building blocks or material, but the word in Latin that a lot of theologians and scholars use is ex nihilo. And what that means is that he made it from nothing. And it also says this, it actually makes these two statements in the New Testament book of Hebrews. This is what it says in that book. It says, by faith, because that's a lot of times what it takes, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. God's the one who made it. That's what it's saying. So that what is seen, and here's the second statement, so what is seen was not made out of what was visible. It was created ex nihilo. It was created out of nothing. And this doesn't make sense to you, and it doesn't really make sense to me because it violates the very principles of our world. It violates science, it violates physics, because if we think back to elementary school, whether it was 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, whatever it was, right, we learned about the law of conservation of mass. And what that law tells us is that matter cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. But this tells us that God is not. He is not constrained by these rules and by these laws. And so what creation was, it was a supernatural event. And this tells us that this world began by God, and it began by God out of nothing. And then David continues on, and he says in the next 3 verses, and he says, day after day, they meaning creation, he says, day after day, creation pours forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them. Yet their voice, creation's voice, goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. David is basically saying the same thing over and over and over again. And what he's saying, especially in that first, I love the first line in verse 2. He says, creation, what it does, it pours forth speech. And when I think of what he's saying there, it reminds me of a waterfall. And the largest waterfall I have ever seen is Niagara Falls, right? And we're going to see a picture of it. It's the American side, and we all know the Canadian side is much better, right? And just in case you don't know, I am Canadian. I'm going to be making some Canadian jokes. Some people were like, why do you love Canada so much? It's because it's the greatest country in the world, right? Anyways, so this is the American side, right? And so if you've seen it, it's breathtaking. And I didn't know this until this past week, but the amount of water that passes over those falls every second is more than 75,000 gallons. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me, right? So when David says that day after day, creation pours forth speech, sort of like that waterfall pours forth water, gallon after gallon after gallon. What he's saying is creation is always pouring forth knowledge about who God is. David's saying we can't get creation to shut up about who God is. It's constantly talking, constantly telling us about God. And so the question isn't, does God exist? Does God communicate with us? That is not the right question. The question is, are we listening? Because the world that we live in, the culture that we live in, is one of busyness, is one of hurry, where we're constantly rushing around, running around from one meeting to another, from home to school, to work, to back to home, from one kid's practice or activity to another, and we're constantly going and going and going. And at least for my pace of life, when I look at it, I rarely pause to stop, to look around, and to listen. But when we do, I truly believe, whether it's the beauty of a mountain, whether it's the warmth of a sun, whether it's a conversation with a new friend, through all of this, that we will hear the voice of God saying to us, I love you, I see you, I care about you, I want to have a relationship with you. So David is saying creation constantly speaks, and it tells us about this God, the God who created it all. And years ago, when my wife Robin and I were first married, I think it was like, 17, 18 years ago, whatever it was, right? I know when we were married, right, by the way, but somewhere around, right after we got married in the first couple of years, we were living in Boston, and a family member came to visit us. And this family member does not follow Jesus, but knows that we do. And so after dinner one night, right, the kitchen was a mess, right? Stuff all over the place. There were plates and utensils. We had soda cans. We had containers, different things lying everywhere. And so I just wanted to clean everything up. So I took a trash can, and regardless of the cans or the containers, I just started throwing everything in the garbage. And this family member saw what I was doing and said, don't you recycle? Aren't you a Christian? Shouldn't you care about the planet more than anyone else? And I was like, oh, right? It's like she stabbed me right in the heart with her words, because the answer is yes, we should, right? And this is what I believe. A person doesn't have to follow Jesus to have a passionate care about creation, to passionately care for what God has created all around us. But this is what I believe. There are no better intellectual, spiritual, and moral reasons for caring about creation than in the Christian faith. And let me just say this, right? For the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to talk about what does it actually look like for us to care about what God has made all around us, whether it's human beings, whether it's trees, whether it's fish or what animals or whatever it may be. And maybe for some of us, we may hear that and we may be tempted to turn that off, because we might be like, oh, you know what? That's that leftist liberal stuff. But because let me just say that I did a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of watching in preparation for this talk. And one of the things that I learned this past week was the number one indicator as to whether people actually will engage and people will actually care for God's creation isn't their background or their socioeconomic status or where they're from. You know what the number one indicator is? Who they voted for. It's their political affiliation. And so that made me so sad. Because if we're a follower of Jesus, what we're saying is, what that means is, we're not governed by what God desires and what God says in the scriptures, but we're more attached to our political affiliation. And I was like, that is so sad to me. And so if that is us, and what I'm saying, you're like, you're just tempted to be like, forget it, right? I don't agree with that. That's those people on the other side of the aisle, whether it's left or right or whatever we believe. This is what I want to challenge us to do, because I don't believe this is political. I truly believe that this is biblical. That the Bible passages that I'm actually going to be looking at, if you disagree with them, I would love to have a conversation with you about it. Take a look at the scriptures, mine it for ourselves about what God says about how to actually take care of these resources that He has entrusted to us. And if we believe something different, I would love to know your perspective. I genuinely and humbly ask that. And I genuinely, humbly mean that. Because I truly believe that this is God's mandate, that this is a command that He has given us. It's not just a suggestion saying, hey, if you got a couple extra minutes, live this way. No, He's saying, if you are somebody who says, you follow me, this is how I want you to conduct yourself, and this is how I want you to live. And when it comes to care of creation, you know what? For mostly, if we're a follower of Jesus, we don't have a great reputation in this area. And there was a man by the name of Lynn White, and he was a professor. He was a professor of medieval studies at Princeton University back in the 1930s. And I believe let me just get the date right, in 1967, he wrote a landmark essay titled The Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis that was published in Science magazine, which is one of the premier academic journals in the world. And one of the reasons why I know this is that when I was in my college days, I worked in cancer labs and microbiology labs because of my undergrad, and I read a lot of Science magazine, right? It's a good one, right? But it's highly respected. And one of the things that he said was that he said the Christian faith, he said in this article, the Christian faith is one of the main reasons why we have an environmental crisis today. And this guy is a professor of medieval studies, remember. And so he actually traced the environmental crisis at that time back to the Middle Ages of Europe when Christian faith and the Christian theology was actually flourishing. And he actually believed, what he believed and what he said is that Christian theology leads people to the exploitation of nature. And one of the verses that he believed spoke to this and compelled people to do this is in the book of Genesis. And this is what it says in verse 28. It says that God blessed them, and them being Adam and Eve, the first two human beings. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And he said that this verse has caused people to believe that they can exploit creation and use its resources however they want. And those four words that are highlighted there, subdue it and rule over it. He was like, it's those words right there. But this is the thing, right? When we actually look at this verse, that is not what God is commanding here. When he's saying, I want you to subdue creation, I want you to rule over creation, he wasn't saying, hey, you know what, as human beings, I want you just to conquer it, I want you to just beat it over its head and use it however you want. That's not what he's saying here. That's not the command there. The command is not to conquer, the command is to be a steward of the manager of God's resources. God is saying, all of this is mine. It's all mine. I'm the one who made it, and I am the owner of it, and I am entrusting it to you to care for it, to protect it, to preserve it, to develop it, so that it would be what I dreamed and destined for it to be. That is what he is saying here. That is the statement that he is making. And so it's not do whatever you want, but it's actually to live and care for creation in the way that God desires, because he ultimately is the owner. It's a command for stewardship. And one of the greatest passages in the Bible that talks about creation care and the care of God's creation and what he has made is also found in the book of Genesis. It's actually Genesis chapter 9. And this is actually a thought from the late author and pastor Tim Keller. He has a lot of great thoughts on this. But in Genesis chapter 6 through 9, we have an account of the flood. And probably many of us, we've heard that story where one day God came to a man named Noah and said, hey, I want you to build a big boat in the middle of nowhere, not even close to water. Right? So this guy looks so incredibly foolish, but he says yes to God, starts building a boat, and then God says, I want you to bring your entire family onto this boat and 2 of every animal on this earth, because I am going to destroy this earth via flood. And that's exactly what happened. And if you want to understand the details of why that happened, that is another message for another day. But anyways, so that's what happened, right? And afterwards, what God did was that he entered into a covenant relationship, a covenant agreement with creation and with the earth through Noah, right? And this is ultimately what happens, and this is what he says. It says, then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, I now establish my covenant. And the best way to think of it, we don't really use that language. We can think of it as an agreement, almost like a contract in a lot of ways. I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is a sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And what's interesting in the Bible is that God only made a covenant with something or someone in order to save it. It's the reason why he made a covenant with Abraham, with Moses, with David. And so what's so interesting here is that he makes a covenant with the earth. And so does this mean that the earth needed to be saved? Did it do something wrong? Did it sin against God? And no, the answer is it didn't sin against God, but you know who did sin against God? We sinned against God. And so because of our sin, God knew that we would ultimately exploit and devastate the earth. And so he understood the earth wouldn't need to be saved from itself. It would need to be saved from you and me. And so when he enters into a covenant, into this agreement with this earth, what we see is God's commitment to protect and to preserve his creation. And so if we are stewards, remember, we're managers. God has said, hey, these are the resources I have given you. I want you to do with it what I desire, protect it, preserve it, develop it, use it in the way that I want. If this is who we are, what this then means is that when we see God's creation and God's resources being exploited, being devastated, being abused and misused, our job is to step in and to stop it. But at the same time, it's also to live in such a way that it allows everything around us, not just us, but all of God's creation to truly flourish and be what God dreamed and destined for it to be. Because when we actually care for creation, this is what it says, this is what I see all throughout the scriptures. When we care for creation, what we're doing is that we honor our Creator. We respect our Creator and how he desires for us to live. And someone who actually does this, and I learned a lot about farming this past week, is a guy by the name of Matthias Pitts. And Matthias, he is our worship arts leader over at our Orient campus, and with all of his free time, which he has none of, he and his family own and operate Ironwood Ranch, which, as I mentioned, is a farm. And so he told me about his farming philosophy, and his farming is really extraordinary in that his family, they look at the scriptures and see how God has said, this is how I want you to care for creation, and then they do it. And so this is one of the things that they do. Again, I don't know anything about farming. I just learned all this past week. And so on a particular field, what they'll do is they'll send out their cows. And so on that field, what the cows then do is they have the ability to roam around freely, they eat the grass, and they drop their manure. Right? And when they drop their manure, what happens is that this manure then collects insects inside of it. Right? Guess you didn't think I was going to talk about, you're going to hear about manure, you're hearing about neurons today, all this kind of stuff, right? It's all free, right? Anyways, so it drops the manure, collects insects, and then after a short period of time, the cows doing this, they move these cows onto another field, and then they bring on the chickens in that field, because you know what chickens do? They actually eat the insects in the manure, as gross as that is, but they do that. right? But in addition, as they're doing it, they spread the manure all around the field, which enriches the soil and actually promotes grass growth, so they don't have to use synthetic fertilizers, toxic pesticides on those fields. It just does it naturally. And this farming philosophy, it is so different, because if we know anything about industrial farming, for in a lot of ways, what happens with these animals is these animals are put in these tiny stalls or cages where all they have room to do is stand up and to lie down. And in many ways, and many times, they're just simply standing in their own waste. And they're injected with all these antibiotics and all these growth hormones and all of these kinds of things. But not at Ironwood Ranch, that they are allowed to roam freely. And when you actually look, you're like, this is the way that God designed creation to be, these animals to be, not just caged up and to raised up for somebody's consumption, but actually treated in a different way. And one of the things that they believe, that Matthias and his family believes, is that rather than trying to push against God's design, what if we actually moved along those same lines? And I've never actually had the opportunity or the privilege to be able to eat the meat that they raise. But every single person who I've had a conversation with, they say it not only tastes better, but it's better for you. And one of the cool things that Matthias actually said to me is that actually raising animals in this way is a lot less work. When it's not about the bottom line, but when we most treasure and value, this is the way that God desires for us to operate. Different things are able to happen. Beautiful things are able to happen. And one of the reasons why I care about this so much is that it's, in a lot of ways, it's an issue of fairness to me. Because when it comes to God's creation, many times what ends up happening is that, and this happens in so many different areas of life, the people who violate, the people who devastate, the people who exploit, they don't necessarily feel the ramifications or the consequences of those decisions. But it's really the people on the margins, the poor, the oppressed. These are the people who feel those decisions the most. And it's not just here in our country, but it's all around the world. Whether it's people because of the environment and what is happening and creation of what is happening, the devastation that is happening all around us, where they don't have access to food anymore, that they don't have access to clean water, and the instability that comes in countries and nations. All of this is interconnected. And this is what I see. And this is when we really dive in, and it's like God has asked us to operate in this way for a very specific reason, not only for our flourishing, but that we would have a greater vision, not just of humanity, but of creation in our world, that our decisions don't just impact us, but it's all interconnected, and that this is what it is. And this is the thing. I recognize that for a lot of us, this is hard, right? Even if somebody says, hey, Andrew, I want you to change the way that you live, it is really, really hard. And none of us enjoy doing this. And so one of the talks that I was actually listening to was sent to me by a good friend. And it's a woman by the name of Catherine Hayhoe. And she's neither a Republican nor a Democrat. She's actually Canadian, which makes her one of the greatest human beings alive, right? And completely unbiased, of course, because we Canadians are that. But this is the thing. This is one of the things that she suggested. She goes around talking about this topic so often. And she says, you know what a great first step is that I invite people and challenge people to do? Is just simply to have a conversation. And she is somebody who passionately follows Jesus, because we don't talk about this issue a whole lot. Probably of all the messages, if you have been to church for years, this may be one of the first messages that you have actually heard, that we have heard about caring for God's creation. And so she says, hey, what if we actually had a conversation? If we have a conversation at lunch afterwards and we're sitting across from someone who does follow Jesus, and to say, hey, you know what do the scriptures say about this? And how does it compel you and motivate you to live in this way? And if that person doesn't follow Jesus, to say, hey, you know what do you think about this? Why do you live in the way that you do? And as we have these conversations, they spark ideas and they invite us into a different way of living. They broaden our worldview and our God view. And this is something that's so special about God. And I love his heart. And he says it's not just about us in a vacuum, but all of humanity and all of the world. May we choose to live in a different way, a way that I believe truly honors God. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you that you care so deeply, Lord, not just about us, but all of creation, God. And so, Lord, thank you that this is your heart. But in order to live in this way, it takes courage and humility. And so help us to do that, Lord. Even if the next step for some of us is we're going out to lunch afterwards, or we're having just a bunch of people over and we're eating, to have these conversations, to ask the questions, God, so that we would be able to see more of your heart, Lord, because we want to be in greater alignment with you. Because I truly believe that that is the best way, not just for us to live, but for our world to be. Help us to do that, Lord. And we pray these things in your name. Amen.
We want to step into this next moment together and sing about a song that talks about his greatness and how amazing he truly is. From creation to creator, we want to sing this song out together. Here we go. From the highest of heights to the depths of the sea, creation revealing your majesty. From the colors of fall to the fragrance of spring, every creature unique in the song that it sings, all exclaiming, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. Yes, it says, all powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim, you are amazing, God. Oh. Listen, it says, who has told every lightning bolt where it should go? Or I've seen heavenly storehouses laden in snow. Yeah. Who imagined the sun and gives source to its light, yet conceals it to bring us the coolness of night. None can fathom, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. He's all powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim that you are amazing, God. You ought to let that come out of your mouth. Say, you are amazing, God. Oh, you are amazing, God. You're indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky, and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. Sing, he's all powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim that you are amazing. Come on, let's call him indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky. That's why I say you are amazing, God. Another one we say that he's incomparable, unchangeable. You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. There's one line I want us to really put our focus on. That you see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. think about it, you see the depths of my heart, and you love me the same. This means he's the creator, and he's made everything about you, and he sees every part of you, even the dark parts that may exist in your heart, the broken parts that may exist in your heart. He sees all of it, yet he loves you the same. Yet he loves you the same. So I'll say it one more time. You see the depths of my heart, yet you love me the same. You are amazing, God. Oh, you're amazing. You truly are amazing.
And just to give us a heads up, next week, we're actually going to see the love of God for his people, the love of God for creation, because we actually have baptisms next week. And so this is a great service, not only for us to be a part of, but to invite family and friends, because it really is powerful hearing these stories. And so as we end today, also a reminder that our prayer team will be down front, if I can get those words out. And so I want to say thank you for being here, everyone, and we will see you on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your Sunday.